Good morning. We're going to get started. I'll apologize for the late start, but I do know that at this point you are taking all of our exhibits into consideration. I'll just wait. At our head table, we have Principal MacDonald, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Mona campus, under whose auspices, portfolio, this event and the rest of the events for the days leading up to February 1 to 3 fall. We are very fortunate to have Mr. P.B. Scott, President of the PIOJ, here with us today for our launch, and Dr. Gordon Strawn, who is the Director of MORI. We also have Sir Kenneth Hall with us, who has quietly been behind the scenes helping to drive the whole initiative on research into innovation and development. Thank you very much, Sir Ken. Registrar, Dr. Camille Bell Hutchinson, and our PVC for Graduate Studies, who many of you will remember as being the co-conspirator in all of these activities, has continued under a more quiet vein, but still very much a part of research days across the campus, of which Mona is one. Our deans, our deputy deans, and the deputy bursar. Most importantly, we have members of the team, the coordinating team here with us. We're now a group of 20, and it's a fantastic team. So let me welcome everybody. I'm going to pause also to welcome Mr. Chung, who has been another important part of our discussions about the growth agenda. Mona, over the past few years, has been stressing, I won't even use the word repositioning, has been stressing the important role that it plays in research driving innovation and development. We also recognized some years ago, when Sir Kenneth started Research Day as the then principal of the Mona campus, that perhaps a lot of the work up here is the best kept secret. Our efforts over the 3 days of Research Days started as 1, grew to 2, now 3, and we really have a lot of other activities around it, is Mona's effort to engage the private sector and the public in what is done up here, what can be done, and that we are very proactive in trying to find solutions to Jamaica's issues. So I welcome you all here to our press launch, and therefore I must thank the press. I must welcome them, but I must thank you, because all of what I have just said you are a critical part of, because one way to get this message out is through the media. I will acknowledge that over the past few years, many of our activities have continued after Research Day, and we hope the same will continue this year. So we are at that point in the program where I will invite our principal, sir, I'm elevating you, our principal, and one of the staunchest supporters of Research Day. I'll tell you a little story before I ask Professor MacDonald. I was on the corridor in September. Now this is, previously he had asked me, why are you meeting? I haven't seen any Research Day meetings yet. I don't see you all in the conference room. So to the committee, lest you think he's not following everything, he is. Principal, please come and welcome us.
Thank you so much, Professor Eldemar Shearer. Sir Kenneth Hall, former principal and also former Governor General, and let me express thanks to you. As you heard from Professor Eldemar Shearer, it was during his tenure as principal of the Mona campus that he conceptualized and institutionalized Research Days. So thank you and congratulations. Mr. Paul Scott, President of the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica, Mr. Chung, PVC Weber, our campus registrar, Dr. Gordon Strawn, and some very important gentlemen. For those of you who don't know it, our deans, because they are responsible for the core business of the university, teaching and learning, and also research. So our deans are some very important persons. Other UWI colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my distinct pleasure to once again announce the launch of University of the West Indies Research Days. Over the past 18 years, this significant has given the UWI the opportunity to showcase the outstanding work being carried out by our academics and researchers. From exploring the concepts engendered in the development of our regional literature and arts to creating new pathways towards research and innovation, this event highlights the all-encompassing work of our research community that is committed to improving the development and social welfare needs of the Jamaican and regional community. The past 68 years have allowed us to place our stamp on research and innovation throughout the Caribbean, and Research Days activities have enabled us to connect with individuals interested in our work by giving them direct access to discuss, question, and engage our researchers. It is in the spirit of sharing knowledge, expanding opportunities for development, and appreciating the beauty of scientific discovery within the shores of the Caribbean that the UWI is pleased to celebrate the 18th staging of our Research Days. Under this year's theme, Driving Development Through Research and Innovation, we will showcase the impactful work of researchers who are striving to create better opportunities for development of our region and our country. From scientific advances to discussions geared at exploring the complex sociological framework of the Caribbean and beyond, this event will once again delve into the multifaceted and diverse research programs that are created to facilitate innovation, growth, and development. But more importantly, we value this opportunity as an academic community to share our knowledge with the people we hope it will benefit the most, the general public. For the UWI Research and Innovation is only worthwhile if it has beneficial and positive impact on the welfare and livelihoods of the community we serve. Going forward, you will see the UWI and the Mona campus being a more activist institution, and in more ways than one, you will see the Mona campus moving back to the center. 3 years ago at my induction as principal, I made a commitment to reposition our research by putting the emphasis on projects which have the potential to contribute to the growth and development of Jamaica and the Caribbean. This year's exhibition will allow us to draw critical attention to over 70 areas of research being conducted on our grounds. You, ladies and gentlemen, and the general public, our own colleagues, will view the exhibits and come to your own conclusion as to whether how far along the road we have gone to achieving what I said we would be seeking to do at my induction as principal of the Mona campus. I think we have moved the needle. I think we have moved the ball upfield, but we have a long way to go yet. And we're so happy that Mr. Scott, that you agreed to be our guest speaker, because we value our relationship with the private sector of Jamaica with the private sector regionally and internationally as well. And what we have done over the years, in recent years, is to forge a partnership with the private sector. And I would dare to say that despite the comments which were made after my induction, today the Mona campus has never, we have never been closer to the private sector. Sir Ken, you'll recall, I made a statement, I blamed everybody for the lack of development. In terms of the development of the human capital, that's a matter of record. But I said that we had not done enough. And I said the governments had not done enough. They take that S off, it changes the meaning. And I also said the private sector had not done enough. And I said that our own university had not done enough. I was praised in some quarters, and I was chastised in other quarters, and they said you would drive the private sector away. But today, we have never been closer to the private sector. And in fact, we have a memorandum of understanding with the private sector, as well as the JMA, as well as many, many, many private sector entities in Jamaica. I believe that is this partnership between the university and the universities, because I believe other universities also have a role to play, the private sector of Jamaica, the public sector, and the government. I believe it is that partnership which will end this cycle of no growth or low growth. I believe it is that partnership that will take us out of poverty. And as I said the last time I spoke, I am tired of poverty. And we definitely need to grow our economy. I believe if the economy of Jamaica grows, if we are able to achieve growth, then the region will grow. So thank you for agreeing to be our guest speaker. As I said, I made that commitment to reposition our research by putting emphasis on projects which have the potential to contribute to the growth and development of our region. You will see the work being carried out at the UWI. We always aim to educate and expand on the critical knowledge base of our diverse community. This event, once again, enables us to engage with a wider cross-section of our Jamaican society, essentially bringing higher learning to their doorstep. I invite the public, and in fact invite all of you, my UWI colleagues included, to join us for these 3 days that will showcase research excellence. You will all have the opportunity to gain a bird's eye view of all the important research being carried out, discuss the work with our researchers, and engage in stimulating knowledge exchange with others with similar interest. We also warmly welcome regional and international researchers to this event with the expectation of establishing new and critical relationships that will drive research and innovation further in order to foster development opportunities for our nation. As principal, I am indeed proud to launch this year's exposition and even prouder to commend the work that will be on display. Thank you all for joining us this morning, and I look forward to yet another successful staging of UWI Research Days. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Principal, and thank you for putting our efforts over the 3 days into its framework. We have this year been very much directed and driven by the growth agenda, in keeping with your mandate to us that we must focus on development. And Principal, just to assure you that our deans have been very much part of this year's planning as well. Professor Boxill has had to move his faculty board to accompany us. Professor Fletcher has given us rooms because of other rooms, and campus registrar has been part of it as well. And therefore, sir, we have in fact stretched our tentacles. We feel sometimes at these meetings I feel like an octopus, where we're trying to bring in all of the elements. And as Principal said, and I'm sure that Dr. Gordon-Strawn will mention it, we will this year, thanks to the intervention of PVC Weber, we will in fact have St. Augustine, Cave Hill, Open Campus, and Bahamas all participating in UWI Mona's Research Day to incorporate the theme of One UWI. So thank you very much, Principal. Principal has already really done the introduction to Mr. Scott for me, but just for me to say that we are very happy to have the PSOJ. I'm to do Georgiana first. Thank you, Sir Ken. See why I can't do without him? Thank you. And he didn't have to say a word. He just looked down. What is she doing? But I'm going to invite Dr. Gordon-Strawn, who has been a very important part as part of MORI, but also as part of the committee. Some of us have ideas, some of us execute the ideas. So between Dr. Gordon-Strawn and Ms. Ogilvy, who is somewhere, and Mrs. Porter-Jones, they're the ones who really translate these ideas going around the table. So Dr. Gordon-Strawn is going to come and give us an overview of what can be expected during the exposition.
Thank you, Professor Shearer. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Chair, PVCN Principal, Professor Archibald MacDonald, PVC, Grad Studies and Research, our own Professor Weber, Registrar, Dr. Bell Hutchinson, Professor Sir Kenneth Hall, Deans of the University of the West Indies, members of the UWI Senior Management Team, staff, students, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It is my task to give a program overview, and I have to confess that this was a very difficult task. Most times a task is difficult because you can't find enough to say. This time it was a complete opposite. There was so much that I wanted to highlight. Everything seemed so exciting, so interesting, that I had to choose a few. So I know when I walk out of here, I'll have a few enemies. I might be chastised for not presenting on some of the work, which are really signature events. So I am encouraging you to go through our event schedule and to look to see what important things I've had to mix out. So as you know, our research days this year is a little bit earlier. We will be doing it during the first week of February, from February 1 to February 3, and it starts on a Wednesday and ends on the Friday, the February 3rd. We have over 100 events and activities, and our main exhibition will be at our Mona Research Village. Our theme, as Professor MacDonald had alluded to before, is driving development through research and innovation. And we will highlight Mona's role in providing solutions for some of the problems that we're facing today. So just by way of a snapshot, we have several different types of events. We have signature events. We have 2 research publications, which will be displayed and will be circulated. We have our flagship exhibition, which again will be at the Research Village. And we have a comprehensive program of activities and events across all faculties. And these include workshops, especially for students doing CXC and CSEC, and CAPE. We have several book launches, we have lectures, seminars, panel discussions, we have a graduate lounge, and we have so many different things. We even have experiments for people to engage in. So please have a look at the program so you can see what I have missed out. Our key signature events are firstly our official opening ceremony, and our guest speaker for that event will be the Honorable Dr. Horace Chang, Member of Parliament, and he's a minister with responsibility for water, works, and housing in the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation. Right after the opening ceremony, the principal will do his official tour of the research village. And this year we have a very special event. It's our inaugural Research to Policy Forum. We're particularly proud of this forum because we are going to bring together collaborative research, which was done by UWI in collaboration with several sectors of government, the Planning Institute of Jamaica, the National Environment and Planning Agency, the National Commercial Bank, and several others. And what we're going to explore is how this collaborative research actually worked. Did it work? Did it have an impact on policy? Did it change how processes are being done? And aside from all of that, we're really wanting to seek other opportunities for collaborating with these sectors, public, private, and other sectors. So this is going to be an interesting forum, which I encourage you to engage in. The principal's annual award ceremony is held also during this period, and during this ceremony, the principal officially and formally awards the work of outstanding researchers here at the University of the West Indies. And of course, all the faculties have organized their own signature events. So just to give you a taste of a few, I think I pulled out 3, and I have to say I pulled them out randomly because, as I said before, it was a difficult task to choose. So the Department of Government will have a book launch, and the title of the book is A Critical Discourse in Alternative Development. The authors are Eris Skoberg, John Martin, and Sonia Gatcher. And the guest speaker, ladies and gentlemen, will be Mr. Errol Green, who is the CEO of the St. Thomas Municipal Council. This book launch is quite important, I think, because the book critically examines the role and relationship between local government and national economic development. And this is, I think, a first for us, having a look at the role of local government in national development. The Institute for Gender and Development Studies will also have a public lecture, which is of global importance, and it deals with the issue of human trafficking. The title of the lecture will be Social Justice Response to Human Trafficking in Negril, Jamaica, and the main presenter will be Reverend Dr. Margaret Fowler. Every year we partner with the American Friends of Jamaica, the Cobbs Family Foundation, to give an annual lecture. And this year our main presenter will be Ambassador Aloma Samba, and she will be looking at education and healthcare, the equitable imperative for Jamaica. Now, as you may or may not know, the DNA bill has been passed. And as citizens of Jamaica who have to navigate our way through our justice system, I think it's imperative for us to find out what this bill is all about. Will it infringe on our human rights? Will it help to expedite justice? And how will it help with our whole legislative process? So to examine these issues, we will have an event which is being put on by the Faculty of Medical Sciences, where a panel discussion will be held. Mr. Jeremy Taylor, who is a Senior Deputy Director of the Public Prosecution Office of the DPP, and Professor Wayne McLaughlin, who is our resident forensic scientist specialist, will be on this panel. I alluded to these earlier. We have 2 important publications each year, Research for Development, which showcases the work that we have done, which are aimed or seek to tackle major development challenges, and the Outstanding Researchers publication. And this Outstanding Researchers publications really is a compilation of the researchers who will be getting an award from the principal this year, and their work and what their work has been able to do. As usual, we've taken over the theme from last year, which was that of a research village. Normally we would have a research tent, but this year we're having our research village again because it was quite a hit last year, right, Professor Shera? And we have several exhibits in that research village. We have 12 different themes, 6 different sections, and we will profile research facilitators, such as our own university library, the bookshop, and institutions within the university for which we can't do research without, so the facilitators of research. And we will also have independent research centers who will also showcase their work. One in particular is the Institute for Sustainable Development. We will have several interactive exhibits, and I pulled this one out because I like CSI, so forgive me if you don't. And we are going to recreate a murder scene. My original slide actually said recreation of a murder scene with victim. And I thought I should take the victim out. The victim would actually be a mannequin, obviously not a real person. Well, so we'll recreate a murder scene, and our visitors will be invited to go through the rigors of collecting and processing the forensic evidence, including DNA analysis, and they will have to come up with the solution to the mystery. So can you solve the mystery? A kind of a whodunit. We're also quite proud of our students, and I'm highlighting our engineering students here because this year they're entering a competition called the Southeast Con Hardware Challenge. And this challenge requires them to develop a Star Wars robot. Now, this Star Wars robot will have to do several things, including a duel with a saberlight and shoot missiles through a series of holes. So you may want to stay a little bit away from the robot while the shooting is going on. We're not quite sure what kind of missiles, what ammunition the students will use, but we're sure that it will be fun and exciting. So just to point out a few of our feature exhibits, we have our policy wall, which is now a standing exhibit within the research village. And this year, in particular, we are looking at economic development in Jamaica and the Caribbean and how our work has impacted on economic development. Professor Shero alluded to this earlier, the One UWI exhibit. As you know, we're moving towards a One UWI concept, and we will be showcasing selected collaborative research projects from all regional campuses. Our research village will have several different sub-areas, and I won't go through all of them. I'll just say agriculture, education, finance, law, manufacturing, telecommunications, tourism, and hospitality. Now, we can't do all work and have no fun, so we always try to infuse some fun into the whole experience. I mean, the forensic sciences whodunit mystery was fun too, and there'll be other fun things that we will do, but we always try to have some daily lunch hour concerts, and I wanted to just highlight the one that's being done by our Faculty of Humanities and Education, which aims to promote equality and diversity, and the theme of their concert is Many Voices, One Song. So come join us on campus, February 1 to February 3, as we explore tomorrow's solutions today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think you'll all agree that she has done an excellent job in taking us through. I think the program we all have is about 40 pages. So to have gone through this and given us a little taste of everything that is going to be there. And some of what we have on exhibit today is to further whet your appetite. And there's a particular display at the back, and I see Professor Taylor here. One of the comments we get is, okay, so you do this once per year, so what? So we, at the back, we have some posters, and we've actually brought the posters from one of the first policy walls to show you that really and truly what you're seeing is a taste of our continuity. And therefore you will see the climate change group, and I'm simply using them, there's others, that have gone from the first year in 2014 with tools to measure hurricanes and that, to the policy wall last year, to this year, and now to the supercomputer. So you will see the continuity. And of course, we have people like Professor Weber, who because of the research in that now actually heads the climate change board. So it's things like that that show the continuity of our research. And that's very important to us. So, Mr. Scott, we now have come to that point. As the principal said, It's very important for us as a university for two reasons. Yes, we want to contribute to development and we want to contribute to taking us out of poverty. We also want to support our students. And our students, and many of them are at the back, the ones that you see standing are in fact many of our PhD, MPhil PhD students who actually do the research. So we're also helping the development of our young lives, and we're helping the development of these brains that will be Jamaica tomorrow. So our work is also equally in that area, and I'm allowed to say that as the person responsible for grad students, and they're near and dear also to the principal's heart. So our bonds with the private sector are critical. As you know, based on conversations with Mr. Chung and with Sir Kenneth, one of the things that we have built into this year's Research Day is to activate the research component of the MOUs that the principal referred to. And one of the things that we want coming out is, in fact, the research agendas between our organizations. And we are particularly glad that you accepted our invitation. So, Mr. Scott.
Thank you very much. Professor Denise Edelmeyer-Shearer, Chair. Thank you. And Professor Archibald MacDonald, Pro Vice Chancellor and Principal of the Mona Campus. Professor Gordon Strawn, Director of Mona Office for Research and Innovation. I hope I'm getting all this right. Sir Kenneth Hall, Professor Weber, and of course the Registrar. And if there is anybody else that I have missed out, I apologize. I'm not too familiar with the etiquette of academia, etc. I'm very pleased to be here this morning, to be invited to share with you the opening, well, really not the opening, but the media launch of the 18th staging of the UWI Research Day. The PSOJ, recognizing the need for a greater linkage between the private sector and academia, signed a partnership agreement with UWI in 2015. This agreement is geared towards cooperation between the private sector and the University of the West Indies for collaboration in research, development, and innovation projects, for identification of sponsorship to facilitate activities under which subsequent events could occur. And we've also committed recently to form an innovation committee at the Private Sector Organization of Jamaica that will be made up of individuals from UWI and from the private sector, where we can match the desires of the private sector for research with the capabilities that exist every day here, but are probably not identified as opportunities within the private sector. The private sector obviously requires significant research and development in order for it to remain relevant and sustain its own development and growth. Quite often, those in the private sector don't really realize what it is that they do on an everyday basis actually has a lot of research and innovation connected to it. They don't really take what they see happening in their organization and correlate it to a process or a field, because research and innovation, I would imagine, and I'm not a scientist, is something that can be done extremely well, and probably, like many things, can be done extremely poorly. And those who probably do it extremely well have a process, have a discipline, have a methodology, and have significant amount of experience in what not to do. Those in the private sector, we tend to do things on a sort of everyday basis. If we have a lab in our factory, we're doing testing, but it's the same testing we've done for the last 15 years. Most likely the person who's doing the testing is doing it because the person who had the job before them told them that was the way to do it. They possibly don't understand the science behind the testing. they understand that if something looks a little high, then they're to go talk to someone else about it who may have a little bit more knowledge. But it's very thin in terms of what we're looking at. Development of businesses requires research and development. There's no doubt about that. You only have to look at what exists today in a global marketplace, because every single day the marketplace is becoming more globalized. Even in an island such as Jamaica, where I remember when I came back to Jamaica from university 22 years ago or so, I used to go down to Manor Park Pharmacy, and I used to spend a fortune buying the Times. And the Times was 2 weeks old, right? It wasn't even relevant, right? But the Sunday Times in the pharmacy cost about $250 about 22 years ago or something. It was ridiculously expensive. And it was 2 weeks old. And I used to read every single page of that Sunday Times because it was so relevant. Today, I probably look at the Gleaner, the Washington Post, the Independent, the Irish Times, every newspaper that you could possibly imagine, maybe 3 or 4 times a day. In fact, when I'm eating lunch, I'm sort of scanning. When I'm in the car, I'm scanning. So information is just there. It's real time and it's there. And what's happening in business is that products are becoming instantaneously available. The internet has completely transformed distribution and opportunity to get products. Now, even in a country like Jamaica, where 22 years ago it was acceptable for someone like myself to go and buy a newspaper that was 2 weeks old, right, and read it. Today, information is available in Jamaica instantaneously. Products are going to get to be available instantaneously. In the same way information today is instantaneously, products will get there. There are certain impediments to that happening. We're an island, you have to ship, you have to fill out forms, etc. But technology will overcome that in time, and products will become instantaneous in Jamaica. Now, what does that mean? Well, if you look at a first world market or a large market, and I don't really like referring to Jamaica not as a first world market, because Jamaica is a very sophisticated, competitive market. We have very sophisticated tastes in Jamaica. We have a whole society of entrepreneurs, which means it's always a competitive market. But if you look at the United States, what does that essentially mean? If you look at what Amazon has done to distribution and products and delivering products directly, instantaneously to consumers the next day, what essentially you're getting is a world where companies that were pioneers in the 1970s, 80s, and perhaps early 90s, in what we perceived as high-value areas, which did require research and development, such as Sony, for example, the Walkman, the Discman. These all came from research, innovation, and development. But what has happened to a company such as that is that technology has progressed. Technology now becomes out of date very, very quickly. So people need to constantly innovate and differentiate their products. Every day, you have to change. So while the Walkman had a life cycle of pretty much the whole of the 1980s and the early part of the 90s, the equivalent of the Walkman today might only have 9 months. Therefore, research and innovation are absolutely at the core of a sustainable, successful business and a global economy, at the core. And if you look at who has succeeded, right, in that higher value products, what has really happened is that electronics was a higher value proposition. but it has become commoditized by lower production costs in China, the linking of production with the consumer, and essentially you can buy a mobile phone that has effectively Android, that is a smartphone for $70. You can also buy a Samsung for $700. Still has Android, but there are certain differentiations between the two, right? That allows Samsung to produce a product that effectively does the same thing. You can access your email, you can take pictures on it, you can do WhatsApp, you can do social media, you can use it as a telephone, which is ridiculous, so that's the last thing that I mention when I'm talking about and describing a mobile phone. I talk about all the other things and eventually come to using the core function of using it as a telephone, but that indicates the relevance of change, right? Samsung invests billions of dollars in innovation and research every year. The reason Apple are so successful is because they themselves invest. If we in Jamaica do not start taking innovation and differentiation seriously within our private sector, we too are going to find things that we thought had their little niches, were doing well for the last 15 years, and effectively they become commoditized. Your margins are going to shrink, the relevance of the product's going to disappear, and when you see success in business in this country, you're starting to see it. One example, I'll use it as an example, as much as it pains me to say this, and I shouldn't really say this publicly, but Lasco. Sorry, the competitor, but someone I have to respect very deeply because their success is for everyone to see. Even for me, I have to say that. If you look at a product like iCool came into the market. It came in very aggressively. The product cycle of the flavors, right, will change or will have to change. And we're finding it in our business as well, very quickly. At one time, you would have cram water. Cram water would say there, it's a good seller, lasts for 3 years. Today, that's not how it works in Jamaica. You launched cram water, it does very well. Suddenly, it stops selling. You don't know why it stops selling, because people are into pineapple cherry. And then they're into something else, because you have to innovate. People no longer are satisfied. They like change, like different tastes, like to look at different things, etc. Now, while changing the flavors of a soft drink or a drink or a UHT package is not very doesn't sound very scientific, right? It just sounds like an ordinary business thing. The reality is, it all starts in the lab in that private sector organization. All starts in a lab in the private sector organization. If you want to take a product and look at it, and I can tell you something that I would love to develop, and people in my business always say, boy, PB, you talk too much, you tell people too many things, and that's a problem, but that's just the reality. The person who can develop a long life coconut water in Jamaica is going to do very, very well. But if you've ever tasted the long life product in the US, if you're a Jamaican and you've grown up and had coconut water, you won't drink that canned stuff. It's disgusting. But because you're used to what it ought to taste like. But the individual who can develop that to our sophisticated palate is going to do tremendously well. Now, that is a product that could have global appeal. Now, that is science. And then you take that back and you go, okay, great. So we create a product we can sell. But now we need coconuts to grow. Well, there's another issue. He can tell you about that. But that's what will create massive development in Jamaica. We as the private sector have to be innovation-led. We have to be companies driven by innovation. Now, the reality is that when you look at what we have, what capacity we have got to engage with the intellectual capacity that exists in this country today, because we don't have a lot of time. The problem with this whole globalization thing is that everything happens so much quicker. Therefore, it is absolutely imperative that the private sector in Jamaica has a partnership with those who can deliver efficient research and development that's relevant to their own goals. It is absolutely imperative that research and development is done in a manner that's efficient, because it does cost money. And I'm not going to beat around the bush. People don't like, doesn't matter how wealthy you are, no one likes throwing money at a project that doesn't eventually bring some sort of feeling that you're making a piece of progress at some point in time. Now, that might not be you're not getting the absolute outcome, but the discipline of research ought to be able to deliver to you and articulate a level of confidence that we're moving in the right direction. And therefore, the whole field of knowing what you're doing, how to go about it, etc., is something that could only exist in this great institution in Jamaica, in this campus. Because you are the only people who have necessarily been doing this in a proper professional manner for many, many, many years. And I think this Research Days is very, very important. It's very important. And I congratulate you, Sir Kenneth Hall, for coming up with this some 18 years ago. And I congratulate the present management in maintaining it and developing it. But we at the PSOJ, and Dennis and I are aligned on this, and we have to act on it. We have to work with our members to articulate to them what is the capacity, what are the capabilities, and for us to understand what it is they need. I'll give you an example. I know what I need before we start our committees and everything. I know what I need. I'm chairman of Surge Island Farms. I'm not a farmer. I'm not a scientist. But what I do know is that a cow is an animal, obviously. But effectively, from my point of view, it needs to be the most efficient machine in converting grass and water to milk. Because at the end of the day, I'm not there to make friends with the cows. I'm there to milk the cows, sell it, and produce a great product. Now, for that to happen, we need to make sure the yield from each cow is maximized. It is the best it can possibly be. Now, the reality is we have some headwinds against us. We're in a tropical climate. The weather is not always predictable. So what then happens when a cow is in the hot sun? It sweats. Now, if it's sweating, it's getting rid of water, which could be converted into milk, which is a problem. But of course, the electricity cost in Jamaica doesn't allow us to put them in air-conditioned barns. So that's another issue, right? So we have to find ways of managing the cows, the genealogy of the cows, analyzing which cows produce the best yields, matching them with other cows, putting them together. It's science. But it's science that probably could be done much better by people who actually know what they're doing, right? Rather than individuals who are accountants or business people looking at a research budget and thinking, well, actually, we really need to buy another tractor, so let's just cut that and buy the tractor, right? Because we don't actually have the confidence in the process. Now, if you were able to take the average cow, right? And I'm just going to give you some statistics here. The average cow in New Zealand produces about 25 liters per day, right? Now, New Zealand has very high nitrogen levels in the grass. It rains a lot, so there's lots of water, and it's cool, right? So cows don't sweat much. And they have a culture of agriculture and produce great dairy. In Ireland, it's pretty similar. It's not 25, it might be like 23 or so. But when you start looking at tropical countries, like in Africa, etc., the yield per cow goes down sometimes all the way to 4 liters a day, right? Now, in Jamaica, we're running at about sort of 10. In Costa Rica, they're at like 17. And there are farms in the Philippines that is tropical. There's about 15. So it is very, very real that we can go from 10 to 15, right? That's very real. Now, the difference between operating a cow at 10 and 15 from a profit and development point of view is huge. It's huge. But that requires good scientific practice in the field and good research and development and maintaining the whole family structure, if it is the family tree, the genealogy of the cows, mapping it and making the right choices on a scientific basis over a long period of time, and it will gradually get there because it happens in other places. Now, what does that mean? That means less import substitution, development of a cheese industry, development of yogurts, improvement of calcium into children, and all sorts of things. So there are real benefits for us, the private sector, engaging with academia, and in a real way, not just a sort of nice conversation, feel good, but in a real way. And I think the real benefits, certainly for the private sector, but there are real benefits for the university as well. Because someone like ourselves, we would not expect you to do that for free. And I think you have the capabilities, the capacity here, and it will, once you start to see one or two projects, funding will start flowing in a direction that you won't believe how easy it's going to be to sort of get. But the reality is, a lot of people in the private sector don't realize that they have a scientific problem to solve. They know they have a problem, right? They just don't know what the solution is and where they can go for it and talk to people. And it is going to become more and more important that the message is out there for the private sector, for them to understand that we don't have the time to not innovate and differentiate our products. Because the age of us controlling information is out the window. Today, the product cycle is so small that we have no choice but to innovate and differentiate. Otherwise, we too will end up like Sony and not have a Walkman to sell in the digital era. It'll be a big problem. So for us in the private sector, we are very, very pleased to be here and supporting the University of the West Indies. You know, every day in Jamaica, the University of the West Indies contributes significantly through its research and development in ways that probably are not recognized as such because of the way it actually happens. But I can give you a few examples that I see that have happened and continue to happen that are real examples of how the university contributes on a daily basis through their own innovation and research. And it might not be because they're developing an iPhone, but they understand the dynamics of our society. So, for example, labor relations. Labor relations in Jamaica has improved dramatically. And it needs to continue to improve dramatically because as a society, for us to progress, all of us need to progress, not just the people at the top end of society. If we want the economy to grow, everybody needs to feel the wind of growth and development. The work done by individuals in this institution has come into the work that the PSOJ and other entities have done by virtue of the fact that members of this institution have sat on committees and gone to meetings and essentially have brought through an indirect way their knowledge that has been developed from their research and development here at the university. It's just not recognized as such. Professor Monroe, with electoral reform, he's in the PSOJ. He's the person who's constantly pushing for electoral reform and development. That comes from research here. And we have a lot to be grateful for that. Professor Wind, PPPs, they're being put in place in Jamaica and are going to make real changes to Jamaica almost on a monthly basis. He is a pioneer, a pusher, a person who's there. The credibility that is given to individuals from their knowledge and research and innovation is phenomenal. But perhaps as a society, we don't recognize that the university is at the core that allows that research to have developed in the first place. And perhaps we don't necessarily appreciate that as much. But I would like to say and appreciate that right now. I think the University of the West Indies has contributed tremendously through their innovation and research over the last 18 years, or many years probably before that. And we in the private sector absolutely see that the university represents an important component of the development and sustainability of the private sector. We have to have economic growth in Jamaica. We have to have it. We really have no choice. And if we are going to have economic growth in Jamaica, we have to have our future leaders seeing Jamaica as part of their own future. So much of what we lose in capacity leads on to where we lack in execution in this country. It's not because we don't have the ideas. We have many ideas. The problem is sometimes we just do not execute the very same that we're articulating for ourselves to do better for ourselves. Part of that problem is that so many people emigrate. So many people of our best minds leave. And I think one of the big pushes that we need to do is that we need to work together as the private sector and the university to ensure that people see career paths in scientific areas. Because unless people see a career that can sustain them in engineering, in science, in the forensic sciences, in actual research and development, our capacity is always going to be diminished. Because everything about execution is about people. That's all we are. I mean, as lovely as this building is, and believe me, congratulations, this is the most stunning building. It's great. But really it's just concrete and glass. Because the people in this building are the most important people. They are the most important. They're the people that are going to make the difference. And whether it's the researchers, your graduates, we have to develop a culture that there's a future in research and development in Jamaica. And that requires us, the private sector, taking it seriously and telling people what it actually is. So people can believe they can get a job in a lab doing this, and it's going to be exciting for them. They don't want to get a job in a lab and told, you do this test because we've done it for the last 15 years. No, they want to get a job in a lab and go, okay, listen, we want to develop this product. It's going to blow the market out, but it needs to have these attributes. Boom, 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 boom. Come back and develop it, and we want to taste it in 6 weeks' time or whatever. So science, research, and development are absolutely crucial to the sustainability and development of Jamaica. And so we thank you on behalf of the private sector. We give you our commitment that we will work with you. We have to move quickly. we can't continue to talk about it. And we have to move quickly with critical examples of real partnership where research is happening so people can see it. Because once we have one or two that are working, it's going to create a snowball effect and we get it done. So we just need to get one or two relevant ones done. And I believe this partnership have signed will become something substantive, material, and I hope will be on your policy wall in some shape or form or represented somewhere as being relevant to the university. So congratulations, and thank you very much for allowing me to speak here today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scott. I'm sorry we're at a press launch, because I think every one of our young academics should have heard you. So I'm putting you on notice. We're going to bring you back to a session with our students, because I think we all sat there spellbound. I really do, and I'm not just saying that. And I think you know me well enough to know I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it. I saw Professor Taylor's head churning. I'm seeing inside your head another tool. Water, how much cows. Professor Taylor is known for his computer tools about sweet potatoes and yield. Now I'm seeing milk and cows, right, Professor Taylor? So I'm sure that we will take up the challenge. We will be in touch with Mr. Chung. I promise you, we won't allow the grass to grow under our feet for your cows. We will activate what you have suggested. And I happen to know my boss, who will very quickly say at the next, well, not tomorrow, right, Principal, but maybe the senior managers after, and what have you done? Can I have an update? We know him well, don't we, Registrar? So I want to thank you so much. We've come to the end of this bit, or maybe I need to say we've come to the start of our Research Days activities. I'm sure the press will want to ask a couple of questions as we start to mingle. So let me thank you all for coming. We do have our young researchers at the back. We are taking you from the hill to the seaside over here to show you what we do with sponges, just to whet your appetite to come back. So let me, as I say, thank the press. But I also need to thank the marketing led by Mrs. Dagia and Mrs. Porter-Jones for our team on this very successful launch. Thank you for pulling it together. And I want to thank all of our members. I want to thank our young scientists who have come here, who have brought their posters. And most of all, I want to thank you, our audience, because it is your questions that help us fine-tune. We already know now what one of our policy walls down the road, the workshop from university to private sector research, next year's policy wall. Thank you all. We do have a break. We have our exhibits. Please feel free. Thank you for coming. Sorry, Paul, Anne is... I did say we have a break to the side. I'm seeing hand signals that I'm... Oh. That was awesome.
climate change to Jamaica. In other words, in order to plan for development purposes. And that's kind of where we started. Subsequently, some of this work has evolved into looking at impacts in various sectors, impacts on our agricultural sector. We have come up with a number of tools, for example, in planning, crop modeling, with which we start planning scenarios of climate change. So those were some of the things we have done over the years to come. Leading up to, I think, this year, one of the things we will be showcasing is the new supercomputer which is to enable us to climate change work at a very fine scale. So part of the problem of climate change has been the scale at which we can produce it. The scale has just been too large for communities, watershed. But in this community, we are going to visit our waters, we can right now to scale. This is important because we can extend the work not just for the region, regional states. So that's kind of some of the work that we're doing.
How has UWI Research Days impacted the reach of climate change and the climate change?
I think one of the things we have noticed over the years, and in part due to research, but in other things, generally great awareness of climate change as an issue. And not just as a sound delivery issue, but a developmental issue for our country, for our region. And you think of the range of impacts that climate change has. I think part of that has come with delivery. We have done this research, presenting the researches and other forums. You'd be keen to see that climate change is a huge developmental issue for small islands in the Caribbean, quite extreme. So we have seen the expansion of homes. We certainly have begun to see an expansion of programs to begin to respond to climate change. So recognizing that conservation is the we need to begin to put in place. And so you begin to see these programs at the government university and range of research. So these are some of the things based on which we think the kind of research we have to do has really begun to take shape. And then of course our policy, Jamaica is itself climate change policy, has just climate change policy. And some of the research that we present has helped to shape that policy.
So your team, where that growing from how it started in 2014?
Well, the climate studies really started in the 1992 when Professor Anthony Chen had a foresight vision. Then it was probably just three of us. Over the years, the group has grown. We have a fantastic group, mixture of people. So it would include lecturers on the university campus, not just in the physical sciences, but we also have lecturers in the social sciences. Because of the interdisciplinary nature of climate change, there's a group of students at the undergraduate level work on climate change projects. I've been graduating researchers, junior researchers, research fellows. We have people who have passed through the group and are now working in various sectors, which will maintain the research link with us when we recommend surveys. We'll be having a very good example. They too are continuing. So as we have built more and more into climate change, significant impact in the region, the team has grown. We give them that to great.
So February 1 to 3, what can I expect from your climate change?
I would say you must come to find out. We think we try to every year put on a good interactive experience. If you were here last year, you have walked the village and had to make some decisions premised on what climate change impact would have done to your, if you were the community leader. We try to be interactive, come and see what we do. Okay.
Give me a plug, come out to Research Days 2017. I'll see you there.
Hope to see you at UWI Research Days February 1 to 3 right here in the MonaMedia campus. can work.
Yes.
Anyway.
How can I get this video?
This video? Yes, you can get this video.
Can you email it to me? Or a link for it? Research Days started as and what it is now?
Well, Research Days started as you heard 18 years ago. It was conceptualized by Sir Kenneth Hall when he was principal. In those days, it was a small event, lasting, small but important event, lasting one day. What you have seen now is that it has exploded into a 2-day event, and we have introduced a number of features like the policy wall. It used to be held in a tent. We now have what we call a research village, where you can go from one hut to another. At the Principal's Research Award ceremony, when we give awards to our leading researchers. So it is really an extremely important event in our calendar because, as you know, research is central. It's part of our core business. Teaching and learning will always be there, but what we say is that our research informs our teaching.
What is research? By UWI.
Oh, well, as Mr. Scott said in his presentation, there's no country in the world that has developed successfully without research. If you look at the history of countries, in Jamaica we talk about Singapore, but what we don't say is that it is the private sector, public sector partnering with the universities in Singapore, and that is how they achieve their economic success. That is what happens throughout the world. The Silicon Valley, it is the academia who developed all those products in Silicon Valley. So it is critical that the university works with the government and with the private sector to achieve this elusive economic growth. 3 years ago, I said at my induction that we would reposition our research and concentrate on projects enhance economic development. And that is what we have tried to do, but we have a very long way to go. And we are very pleased that Mr. Scott gave an excellent presentation this morning, one of the best I've heard. We showed clearly the relationship between economic growth and the contribution which institutions like the University of the West Indies should be making as we achieve economic growth and get out of this poverty. I'm not ashamed to keep repeating it. I'm a Jamaican, I'm also a regionalist, and I'm tired of poverty, and it hasn't got to be so. But we have an important role to play to get us out of poverty.
Professor, what more do we need to help UWI achieve its development goals for the region and Jamaica? What more do we need?
No, well, it's happening. It would be excellent if we had a research funding apparatus. So the government of Trinidad, for example, has established a research fund. But we know the economic problems in Jamaica with the IMF and so on. But it would be ideally if our government was able to set aside a sum of money. But that is idealistic. I don't expect that to happen. I think they mean well, but the reality is that they just don't have the resources. However, I believe that the private sector, we're not asking for charity, but there are projects, the intellectual capacity resides here, and there are projects which can assist the private sector to increase their margin and make more money for their shareholders, which is what business is about. And at the same time, the university will earn from that, because as Mr. Scott said, he's not asking, he knows that we won't do it for free. We have to be paid. So funding is critical, because you can't do research without funding. And I believe that is because our economy is still struggling, and those resources can't be provided by the government. The private sector, I believe, has to fill that gap, and I think they are willing to do so, but they too won't give us money for free. We have to do the work, and we have the intellectual capacity to do it.
Thank you so much. Would you look into the camera for me and say, come out to your Research Days February 1 to 3, see you there?
Well, please come to our Research Days, and I'm certain that you will learn quite a lot, and maybe you might even see some opportunities. Whoever you are, if you're from the private sector, you may see some opportunities. If you are a student somewhere, you will see some research opportunities. So please attend Research Days.